Today, we go over some things to consider when placing your fence and gate posts next to various structures. Hey everyone, Jason from Iron Fence Shop. While there's lots of things to consider when planning your fence and gate project, one thing that often gets overlooked is post placement in your structures. By structures, I mean items such as walls, columns, patios, existing neighbor fences, and paved driveways. So today, I wanted to go through a couple things to consider and look into when your fence or gate is going to install next to one of these structure types. This is primarily going to center around the standard posts that get buried 2 to 3 feet in ground and concrete, but we'll touch on the surface mount flange posts at the end of the video as well. When it comes to the placement of the post on the end of your fence run or around your gate, we need to consider not only what you see above ground, but what's below ground as well. While the post you see above ground is important for aesthetics, the amount of post depth underground and the width of the concrete base you pour around it is key as well. Let's start with the width of your concrete post foundation. A lot of folks forget to account for that concrete around the post underground when planning their project. The typical rule of thumb is that the concrete base around your post will be 3 times the width of the post itself. If we take a look at my little 2-inch square prop here, this white skirt around the post signifies the diameter of the post hole. So in this case, we have a 2-inch post multiplied by 3 to get a minimum 6-inch diameter hole that the post is going to sit in. What that means is that on each side of this post, we have 2 inches of concrete sticking out around the post in the middle. You need to make sure that you account for that concrete sticking out past the post underground when placing it up against some type of structure. Now, that couple of inches of concrete sticking out might not sound like much, but it's key you have that minimum diameter of the post hole planned for underground. If it's a fence panel post going against a structure, you could possibly trim the panel. However, if it's a gate, you might not have that luxury. You don't want to get to the last post in your run only to find out you don't have enough room to fit your last panel or gate between the posts. Be sure you take that underground concrete post foundation into consideration. What you want to try and avoid is digging your post hole under a paved structure such as a driveway, or only pour the post concrete on 3 sides of the post when butting it up against a wall or foundation, unless that's absolutely your only option. Let's grab our little prop to illustrate what I mean. Let's start with paved surfaces such as driveways, walkways, and patios. Any solid surface that is only 4 to 6 inches deep. Quite often, this is gate spanning over these surfaces, so adjustment is small to non-existent, unlike a fence panel you can cut to width. Let's take our post prop with its skirt here, signifying the concrete foundation diameter, and these bricks signifying your paved surface. You want to plan your post spacing so the underground post hole diameter is adjacent to the paved surface like this. This will space the post you see above ground away from the edge some, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, and you often don't necessarily want to hug the sides anyway, especially if this is a driveway gate. What you don't want to do is space your post so the concrete foundation has to be dug under the paved surface like this. Sometimes you may have to dig under a surface slightly to make a piece work with your layout, but you want to avoid it if you can. The reason is that you could unintentionally leave a gap between the bottom of the paved surface and your post foundation after the concrete settles and dries. That air gap between the two could lead to cracking, sinking, or crumbling of your paved surface over time. The other situation I mentioned is butting your post up against a surface like a wall or foundation that is parallel to the post underground. So let's say this is our wall right here. While it may be tempting to put the post directly against the structure and pour concrete around 3 sides, it's not something we recommend if you can avoid it, especially if it's a gate post. Ideally, you want to make sure you space your post away from the structure so you can pour your concrete foundation around the post and have it be away from the wall like our little prop skirt here shows. Okay, so we've gone over what to investigate and plan for when it comes to horizontal spacing, but what about vertical spacing? By that, I mean what's hiding underground when you dig down for your fence post. When doing investigational shoveling around structures, always go slow and gentle best you can. You don't want to be pile driving your shovel into the dirt so hard that you unintentionally break something underground that you didn't know was there. These could be items like drain tiles, gutters, sprinkler lines, or wiring for outdoor lights. Your paved structures like driveways, walkways, and patios may have grass and soil on top, but you could run into crushed stone or paver base a few inches down. This is typically not that hard to dig through, but it can be a pain if it comes as a surprise at the last minute. As with vertical wall structures, be wary of any electrical or sprinkler lines that might run along those areas too. You don't want to dig down only to cut into one of those. For structures like stone, columns, or walls, you want to dig down and see if the foundation underneath sticks out to where it may impact your post placement and concrete foundations. It's not uncommon for the foundation of these structures to jut out from the edge and be wider than what you see above ground. You don't want to plan for a post hole only to dig a foot down and find a concrete foundation sticking out 8 inches past the above ground structure. For structures like the side of your house, you also want to make sure there are no surprises underground that may require you to space your post a little further away. If your home has a slab foundation, it may stick out some from the portion of the house you see above ground. And again, don't forget about things like gutters, drain tiles, electrical lines, or irrigation sprinklers that could be buried along the structure's foundation. Look for any sprinkler heads, gutters going in the ground, or any wires coming off the house going underground that indicate something might be lurking under the dirt. For folks using surface mount flange posts, you don't need to worry about digging down and finding surprises. However, there are some post placement considerations you still need to make with surface mount flange posts. The first consideration is how thick or deep the surface is you're mounting on top of. The length of anchor bolt you need depends on the thickness of what you're drilling into. You want to make sure that your anchor bolts do not punch through the bottom of the surface. Most masonry anchors want it to be inside the structure and not broken through the bottom of it. The most important post placement consideration with flange posts is how close the flange is to the edge of the surface. That exact measurement varies based on application and substrate, but there's two generic calculations I've always heard used. The first guideline number is that there should be 4 inches minimum from the edge of your surface to the edge of your outer bolt hole. So take into account the 1.25 inches of flange sticking out past my post here, plus the 4 inches, that means that the physical post you see standing up will be 5.25 inches from the surface edge. The other flange post guideline is that our outer anchor bolt hole should be 5 drilled hole diameters from the edge. This means that you take the size of your anchor hole and multiply it by 5 to get that distance from the edge. In the case of the 3/8 inch anchor bolt size that we recommend on our iron flange post, if we multiply that by 5, we would come out to 1 7/8 of an inch distance from the outer anchor hole to the surface edge. Again, these can vary by situation and mounting surface, but those are two generic calculations. Always go off what the anchor hardware you're using recommends. Using those two generic examples, you want the edge of your flange post anchor holes roughly 2 to 6 inches from the edge of the surface. Not only do you need to take that edge spacing into account, but take into account how that will position the fence on your surface structure. If the fence line starts 2 to 6 inches from the edge, do you have that room to lose on your surface, or would it be better to put the posts in ground outside the paved structure and not lose the room on top of your patio or driveway? Also, if you're using flange posts on top of a wall, is your overall wall width wide enough? While a 5-inch square flange post might physically fit on top of your wall, the wall might not be wide enough to safely drill and anchor bolts into. So there's some considerations to make when placing your posts around various structures. Be sure to check us out here at ironfenceshop.com. Want some additional information on marking your layout and setting your ground posts? Check out this video we did. If you have any other questions, you can shoot us an email at sales@ironfenceshop.com or give us a call at 1-800-261-2729. We look forward to hearing from you.